Nation, I don't mean to alarm you, but Hillary Clinton continues to exist. She is the biggest threat to Republicans in 2016, other than Republicans in 2014. And she has just become more threatening.
We've been anticipating an announcement about Hillary Clinton's future, and today we got one. She's going to be a grandmother.
Now, obviously, news of a grandchild is a joyous occasion, so I just want to take a moment right now to put politics aside and offer the Clinton family a heartfelt congratulations for such a shrewd political move. Right? Right, Fox News?
I think a lot of reporters think maybe this was planned.
Yes. Maybe this was planned. And we all know only the most devious people would ever plan a pregnancy. Clearly, folks, Hillary Clinton has engineered the birth of her first grandchild in a craven political ploy to seem endearing. I mean, not even Barack Obama ever stooped to becoming a grandmother. It's so obvious, folks. Bill and Hillary clearly sat down with their daughter and synced up Chelsea's ovulation cycle with Hillary's campaign calendar. There is no other possible motivation for a couple in their 60s to want their daughter to give them a grandchild. But some naysayers say nay.
You don't think that Chelsea Clinton and her husband are entitled to try to have a baby whenever they want? And they looked at the political calendar. And by the way, if it was going to be planned, it'd be planned for next year when the campaign might actually be underway.
Good point, Howie. If it was planned, the child would be born around the Iowa caucuses. I mean, what a waste of a perfectly good pregnancy.
Now, how could anybody watch that? See, this is what drives me crazy. How could anybody watch that or listen to that or take advice from people who got it so incredibly wrong about major things like the implosion of the United States economy, the housing, Wall Street gamble? How could people who got it incredibly, impossibly wrong on invading Iraq, the need to do it, weapons of mass destruction, how could people go back to them and say, this time they'll get it right? How could they watch this stuff? And, you know, some of the answers might be in, academia. Seriously, I mean, studies have been done on the effectiveness of propaganda, and studies have subsequently been done on the gullibility of the American people and the demise of democracy. And when you lay those three things out, they don't seem to have very much to do with each other unless you put it into context and you realize and you understand that Thomas Jefferson in 1789, founding father, actually said, whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. And that is a big provisional thing. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. And, you know, there are people in power that understand that, really, really understand that. They think about it. They understand it. They get it. They know that. And they don't want you to be well informed. And so they work against that. They disinform and misinform. And they do it on purpose. And this is something that has actually been studied. You know, we like to think that the notion of a well-informed electorate being necessary for democracy to function is a give me. You know, it's just a gimme. And that, presidential debates matter, and that a free press exists, and that, we are able to understand that we're susceptible to ignorance and misinformation, but that there's a remedy for it, that there's real information out there, and that there's real, facts out there, and that we will, in the end, get them. Well, it's not true anymore. A few political scientists started to study this, and they started to discover there is a human tendency, deeply discouraging, to those of us who have faith in the power of information. I always said information was the coin of the realm. It is, but here's the thing. Facts don't necessarily have the power to change people's minds. This is what they found in this study. Facts don't necessarily have the power to change our minds. In fact, quite the opposite. In a series of studies in 2005 and 6, researchers at the University of Michigan found that when misinformed people, particularly political partisans, were exposed to corrected facts in news stories, they rarely changed their minds. In fact, they often became even more strongly set in their beliefs. Facts, the researchers found, were not curing misinformation. They compared it to a underpowered antibiotic. Facts could actually make the misinformation stronger. Like a underpowered antibiotic can actually allow for more powerful viruses to attack. It bodes ill for democracy because most voters, the people making decisions about how the country run, aren't blank slates. They already have beliefs and a set of facts lodged into their minds. And the problem is that sometimes the things they think they know are provably false. And the presence of the correct information causes those people to react very differently than people who have no information. Instead of changing disinformed voters' minds as opposed to the merely uninformed voter, it entrenches them even deeper and attaches them even stronger to the misinformation, the disinformation. Quote, the general idea is that it's absolutely threatening to admit you're wrong, says political scientist Brendan Nyan, the lead researcher on the Michigan study. The phenomenon is known as backfire. It's a natural defense mechanism to avoid cognitive dissonance, meaning you've got these false facts, you've got these false notions, false pieces of information in your head, and the real information creates a dissonance between the false stuff that's already deeply embedded in your brain. And so you react in a violent way, meaning you have to disregard or purge the facts from your mind so that they're not in discord with the disinformation. That's why people propagandize, and that's why it works. This is a long-running argument that people have had, people like me especially, about political ignorance, about citizens, and it addresses the bigger question about the nature of human intelligence and democratic ideals, right? Most of us like to believe that our opinions have been formed over time by very careful, rational consideration of facts and ideas, and that the decisions we make based on those facts and ideas have the ring of soundness and intelligence. But the truth is that a lot of opinions are based on beliefs. And the beliefs don't have a very easy relationship with facts. And rather than having the facts drive your beliefs, beliefs actually drive and dictate the facts that you choose to accept. And so you can twist facts so that they fit better with your beliefs, with your preconceived notions. And you can uncritically accept bad facts so that they fit better with your preconceived ideas. Like asking this Muslim publisher or this Arab news publisher if he knows of any Muslims in Michigan who are terrorists. I mean, why would you even think to ask a question like that? It's because you're reacting to your own belief that Muslims are terrorists. It's because you're reacting to your own disinformation that Muslims are terrorists, when the last two acts of terrorism that we've just recently experienced, and some of you won't even be able to recall them, even though they just happened from a white supremacist, a self-proclaimed anti-Semitic white supremacist who called the Southern Poverty Law Center, had conversations with their intelligence department, and told them, I am a bad man. I do violence in the name of my race. You should check my record. I will do violence in the name of my race. People can't even remember his name. Frazier Glenn Miller. And Ivan Lopez, who just shot up Fort Hood. And all that did was remind the people who cannot have this cognitive dissonance in their head, think about Hassan in Fort Hood, and that he was protected. See, this is how the conspiracy goes. He was protected by the Obama administration because he was never charged with terrorism. His violent crime was classified as workplace violence. And the uncritical mind doesn't say, gee, that's weird. That really is weird, because that is weird. There's no question that's weird. But the uncritical mind doesn't say, why is that? The uncritical mind dismisses the fact that Ivan Lopez was a Puerto Rican American and that Frazier Glenn Miller was a white supremacist. And it forces them never to ask the question, why was Hassan? And the answer is clear: the military has no charge. There is no charge, act of terror, and there is no charge of terrorism that you could bring in a court-martial. Doesn't exist in the military code of justice. You might have problems with that, but that is the truth. That's why. So instead, it becomes a giant conspiracy just to avoid the cognitive dissonance that is so difficult and uncomfortable for people, and then they vote. And then they vote. And then we have this information glut, which alongside a lot of good information broadcasts endless rumors and misinformation and disinformation and questionable variations on the truth. In other words, it's never been easier for people to be wrong and at the same time feel certain that they're right. The Onion had a headline. You know The Onion, it's satire. They had a headline that said, "Area man, passionate defender of what he imagines the Constitution to be." And that is where we're at. That is where we're at. Clive Bundy, the militia movement. This is just another news story. Just another one, albeit a violent one. One where people are now so emboldened by their desire, well, their belief that they're right in the face of being so freaking wrong about the Militia Act, about the Constitution, about the right to keep and bear arms, about a well-regulated militia being necessary. All these things they're wrong about. They're wrong about when Bundy got there. They're wrong about his family claim, his ancestry. Clive Bundy only started on that land in 1954. His family did. Not in 18 whatever, okay? Not before Nevada was a state. All this is made up crap. But people just accept it because it's too painful to admit they're wrong, and it's too painful to have the truth mingling in their head with what they believe the Constitution to be. And so they just keep, it's the garbage in, garbage out. It's what I've been trying to explain to you. If you program a computer this way, which has no beliefs, computer has no beliefs. And if you program it with some garbagey code, Sean codes all our stuff every day so that it could go up on the website, right? And he sits there and he codes it all day long. If he puts in one wrong number, he gets garbage out. Why? Because he put garbage in. And it's the same with these people. It is a phenomenon. And the only cure for it is shaming people, ostracizing them, or as the Amish like to call it, shunning. Because you all have asked me over the years, and what do I do when my uncle, who I really love, is like a conservative nutbag? There is nothing. You cannot engage that person. And you won't, because you care about your family more than you care about being right. The only thing to do is to shame him, shun him. That's it. Phoenix, call me right now at 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. This is The Randi Rhodes Show on 1480 KPHX. You know, whenever I see a celebrity with perfect, smooth, hair-free skin, I always want to know how they do it. So I asked some of my friends, and they gave me an insider secret for getting very smooth skin without any hassle. They use No Pro. Celebrities, models, they have been tossing their razors and expensive salon treatments and switching to No Pro for weeks, not days, weeks of long-lasting results. Literally the best way to remove unwanted hair without any pain, whether it's your legs, arms, bikini-lined face, you name it. And guys, it's great for your chest and back, whatever. You will love how easy this is to use, but you'll especially love the professional results that you get all from home. I'm telling you, ditch the razors, ditch the salon treatments, switch to No Pro. You will be absolutely thrilled. No Pro comes with a 100% 60-day money-back guarantee. Plus, when you purchase, No will give you a $50 gift card to a dermatologist-recommended and award-winning skincare line, plus a free travel case. Go to TalkNoNo.com, get these free gifts. TalkNoNo.com, TalkNoNo.com. Okay, so what do I mean when I tell you that you need to shame people? Well, here's the big picture here. If the people who are either adopting or accepting or even broadcasting misinformation, disinformation, if it had a reputational cost, meaning credibility was, again, everything if you were going to be a news station and people just, didn't find you credible any longer and just turned it off like CNN. The blame. You know what I'm saying? If there was a reputational cost of peddling bad information, it would discourage people from doing it so often. Like when Tim Russert was around, if you went on Meet the Press and you said something dishonest or misleading or something that, flew in the face of some other thing that you said that you were for or that you would do or whatever, and you were confronted with it, you would think twice before you went and did it again. You would think twice before going on Meet the Press again. That is a shamed-based solution. That is what Tim Russert did. He shamed politicians into knowing that if they sat down with him on Sunday morning and they lied to him, he would play a clip or a soundbite or find an editorial they wrote or some document that they signed off on or legislation they voted and present it to them right there in real time. And so people thought twice before they sat on that show, and therefore that show became so valuable because you knew that people had thought it through before they appeared on it, and that whatever they were saying either was going to be debunked if it was false, or they would get to make their case if it wasn't, and there would be an air of credibility about what they were saying to the American public. We don't have that anymore, and a shamed-based solution is a sensible solution. It is the only solution. We have a culture of fast-talking pundits that are making enormous amounts of money, calling themselves entertainers on their tax returns, and sometimes even in public as a ditch, right? As a way to get out of the journalism standard, right? So they say that they're entertainers. They don't need to be married to the facts. And you have fact-checking operations that are considered wonky. The entertainers are getting all the glory, and the people who are doing the hard work of debunking or fact-checking or finding the audio clips or showing the hypocrisy or showing the lie or showing the disinformation, we're the ones that are being, punished and considered wonky or considered, marginal or alternative. We're actually alternative to the facts now. Facts have a life. The facts have no life. The rumors and the conspiracies and the theories and the variations on the truth are now in the spotlight. And the facts are somewhere back here in the dungeons of wonkery. It's where we're at. It's the effect that propaganda has. It's why it's being done. It's why people pony up large chunks of change to put it on the air, to make sure it stays on the air. That's what's happened, and shame is the solution.
Organizers with the Oklahoma militia say they have members in Nevada who say Bundy's cattle were unlawfully rounded up by the BLM.
Evidently, here in America, you don't actually own the property anymore, if you ever did.
The roundup sparked an armed standoff, but it wasn't the Bundy family who owns the cattle. It was militia members from across the nation going up against the BLM. Here in Oklahoma, militia members say they have nearly 50,000 volunteers. Members say they are taking Bundy's side and fear this governmental practice could spread to the Sooner State. Scott Shaw says with all of the recent constitutional infringements by the federal government, the Oklahoma Volunteer Militia is ready to take up arms if needed.
It's up to the feds. The ball's in their court. You know, it depends. You can do this legally, or if you want to try to do a land grab violently, you can do that. We're going to resist you.
Shaw says they haven't had to defend Oklahoma from the feds yet, but says it's beginning to become a concern.
Just look around the country. They're doing it everywhere. If they can do it in Nevada, they can do it in Colorado, they can do it in Texas. I mean, what's to stop them from coming to Oklahoma? The only thing to stop them is we the people.
He doesn't own the land. You see what I mean? This is what I'm talking about. They have convinced themselves that Clive Bundy was there before Abraham Lincoln wrote the Nevada Constitution. And yes, Abraham Lincoln wrote the Nevada Constitution. Abraham Lincoln needed more votes. He needed more states to end the Civil War. And so he made Nevada a state. It was a political ploy to make Nevada a state. And Abraham Lincoln did do that. Look up the longest telegram ever sent, and you'll see that it was the Constitution of Nevada that was sent by Morse code, okay? That's what happened. And one of the things that they did when they made Nevada a state was they claimed the land for the federal government. That's what Abraham Lincoln did. Clive Bundy never owned the land that he's on, but you can't tell that to a militia member. You can't tell that to Sean Hannity. You can't tell that to Clive Bundy, who believes that his ancestral claims predate the Nevada Constitution, except this thing has been in court, and the courts have written otherwise.
This land is unusually fertile and green for southern Nevada. Clive Bundy grows melons here. They're said to be the best in the state. And his cattle, until recently, roamed freely on land managed by the Federal Bureau of Land Management. Before the roundup that sparked protests, confrontations, and gunmen taking a bridge, Clive Bundy explained his ancestral rights to the I-Team's George Knapp.
My forefathers have been up and down the Virgin Valley here ever since 1877. All these rights that I claim have been created through preemptive rights and beneficial use of the forage in the water and the access and range improvements.
Clark County property records show Clive Bundy's parents bought the 160-acre ranch in 1948 from Raul and Ruth Levitt. Bundy's family moved from Bundyville, Arizona. Water rights were transferred too, but only to the ranch, not the federally managed land surrounding it. Court records show Bundy family cattle didn't start grazing on that land until 1954.
Okay, so not 1877 Death Valley days. It's only been since 1954. Happy days. You understand this? The Bundys have only been grazing in the area in question since 1954. That was well after the first Native Americans appeared on this continent, but that doesn't stop him from claiming that he's being treated like Native Americans were treated.
One word spreading through Bundy's supporters and his armed guards, what the federal government is doing to Bundy is exactly what they did to Native Americans.
They are literally treating Western United States citizens, ranchers, rural folks like this, are the modern-day Indians. We're being driven off of our lands. We're being asked to, or forced into reservations known as cities.
The local Paiute Indians were forced into reservations by federal troops in 1875. Yeah. 2 years prior, the tribe was promised the same land. Clive Bundy now grows his melons, and until recently, grazed his cattle.
So, if there's a land dispute and it's based on ancestral rights, then the land goes to Native Americans, doesn't it? Because Clive has only been there, and his family's only been there since 1954. You know, about the time that cable TV first entered the valley. this is what I'm talking about. There are things that you can read, like court cases, that actually the U.S. District Judge, John Rollison, in the case where it was determined that Bundy would not be allowed to use federal land for his cattle because of his failure to pay grazing fees to the Bureau of Land Management, Rollison wrote that it wasn't until 1954 that, quote, Bundy or his father or both have grazed livestock on public lands owned by the United States and administered by the BLM. The Clark County Recorder documents show that the 160-acre Bunkerville ranch that Bundy calls home was purchased by his parents from Raoul and Ruth Levitt. Talk about a mixed marriage. On January 5th, 1948, and the purchase included the transfer to the Bundys of certain water rights, including water from the nearby Virgin River. Cliven Bundy was not born until 1946, and it did not include transference of the federal land or the grazing. It's a 160-acre ranch that he owns, which is a melon farming ranch, not a cattle-raising ranch. He needed the space for his cattle, so he just took it. But if truth be told, and Ancestry calls it, then it belongs to Native Americans.
My rights are all older than BLM even existed, and but my rights were created through beneficial use, and so beneficial use means we use the forage and the water from the very first pioneers come here.
Early census records show Cliven's maternal grandmother, Christina Jensen, was born in Nevada in 1901. One genealogical researcher says records indicate Jensen helped settle Bunkerville some years later.
They weren't even there until 1948. She wasn't even born. The grandma wasn't even born until 1901. This is all made up. It's totally, totally made up, okay? And so now you've got these crazy militia guys who are willing to start some sort of a civil war or secession or whatever, you know, acts of sedition, acts of treason, pointing loaded weapons at federal officers. And, I just can't imagine, like what this would look like if the Native Americans pulled this. I just can't even imagine, where would Fox News be on it? But if we're to believe that ancestral rights trump the statehood of Nevada, right, then that land belongs to American Indians. It belongs to Native Americans and not Cliven. But that does not stop anybody from saying any damn thing that they want to about Cliven Bundy. And when you point out that he should be ashamed, like Sean Hannity ought to be ashamed for the crap that he's doing, for this deadbeat who's lying about who owns this land. Obviously, the federal government owns this land. It was part of the statehood package that Lincoln brokered. So, I will tell you that Ed Schultz pointed out that Sean ought to be ashamed because he's inciting violence, and he is. And instead of answering that question with facts about who owns that land or that it is federal land and that he should have paid his fees like any taxpayer pays his fees, Sean decided to play clips of Ed on his radio show yelling at people, which typically happens on talk radio, and, saying something that Ed Schultz apologized for. He called Laura Ingraham a really, a bad name. Something I've been called, and nobody ever apologized to me because I don't demand apologies. It's rough and tumble. Radio is not a place for the faint-hearted. It's not a place for the meek. It's not a place for the thin-skinned. You're going to have to be called everything in the book in public. But instead of answering any of the questions about the falsehoods, instead of answering any questions about the ownership of this land, instead of condemning, the fact that he's been propping up these militia people who are pointing weapons at federal officers, the law and order Sean Hannity, right? He plays old clips of Ed.
I've had enough with NBC News. Over the past couple of weeks, they've spent countless segments attacking little old me. Here's just one example of left-wing loudmouth, kind of a buffoon, Ed Schultz criticizing this show's coverage, of which I'm proud of the Bundy Ranch standoff with the feds. Take a look.
Fox News and Sean Hannity should be ashamed of their coverage of this lawbreaker and this law-breaking Nevada rancher and his family. I think Sean Hannity is cheerleading for armed conflict with the federal government. Hannity and Fox News are playing with fire.
No, the federal government, their lack of proportionality and sense over a bill. Are they going to send 200 armed agents to everybody's house, snipers to everybody's house? Really? Well, we're not ashamed of our coverage. We're actually proud of our coverage. Now, there's not one thing that Ed Schultz said was true. But guess what? If I was a network exec over at NBC News, I might be ashamed of having this man work for me.
The Republicans lie. They want to see you dead. They'd rather make money off your dead corpse.
You damn right Dick Cheney's heart's a political football. We ought to rip it out and kick it around and stuff it back in him. Do you know what they're talking about? Like this right-wing slut, what's her name, Laura Ingraham? Yeah, she's a talk slut.
Well, you're a frickin' how about that? Get the out of here. How about that? I mean, I'm sure they hit the 7-second delay on that one.
Now, that tape speaks for itself, but unfortunately that buffoon, Ed Schultz, wasn't the only on-air talent over at NBC to set their hateful sights on me last week.
Okay. So instead of addressing the fact that he should be ashamed of inciting violence against federal officers, instead of saying, you know what, the BLM was out there they're not collecting a bill. And this is the new meme on the right about Clive Bundy is that, oh, this is what they do. They send snipers to collect bills. This is the federal government out of control. They went to take the cattle back, to remove the cattle from the land because the land was not being paid for. It's like $1 a head. This man would not pay $1 to use federal land to graze his animals because his ranch isn't big enough to graze the number of cattle that he has. Okay? And they went there to take the cattle back from an armed militia. So apparently, Sean Hannity's theory is that everyone in the country ought to be armed, except for the government. They're the only ones that can't have a gun. They're doing a job that involves dealing with armed militiamen, and they have no place carrying a gun. It's fascinating. It's really interesting.
I want to commend Sean Hannity because he's been really bad on a lot of issues, but he has a lot of courage doing the right thing here. And so I appreciate him being supportive of this. But I think it's because he's a former blue-collar worker and understands property rights and understands that they've already ruined everybody else. How big a deal is it that federal Judge Jones, we have the ruling on Infowars.com, said the BLM is involved in a criminal conspiracy to bankrupt every rancher in Nevada? Yeah. I think that's important evidence, sir.
Yeah, I want to go back to Sean. Definitely, he's my favorite hero, and he's supported me and this movement. And I appreciate and love him for it. I appreciate, support him 100%.
Clive Bundy kissing up to Sean Hannity through Alex Jones, which had to peeve Alex Jones. And that just makes me so happy that they're all infighting now. The fact that Clive Bundy found Alex Jones, well, I think Alex Jones probably found Clive Bundy because Alex Jones is a bottom feeder, and you know that. Everything's a conspiracy. Alex Jones was saying that Harry Reid is going to stage an attack on his own offices to blame it on Bundy and his supporters. He's saying that if Harry Reid is attacked by anybody at this point, it's a false flag operation by Reid himself. I mean, these people are really, but there are people listening right now that know that what I'm saying is true in their mind, but it's so uncomfortable for them to take the disinformation out of their heads, admit that they're wrong, that these are the facts, that he doesn't own that land, that his family hasn't been there since 1877. They've been there not since, Death Valley days. They've been there since Happy Days, and that they don't own this land. The federal government owns this land, and all that they went to do was remove his cattle because for 20 years he's been in the court and lost every single time. But the right wing, supported by the Tea Party, which always goes strapped even to see the president, is bamboozling these people in our country who don't know what happened to them, don't understand how we got here, don't know that Congress is the body of government that would legislate a jobs package, don't know that Congress is the body that would legislate infrastructure repair, don't know that Congress would extend unemployment, think Obama is the one that can do all this without Congress, and they're wrong. But, you know, they know this, but they cannot kick the false stuff out of their head because there's so much disinformation in there, and it's uncomfortable for them. The cause for that is low self-esteem, believe it or not. And that's why shaming works, meaning there's a reputational cost to somebody who has such low self-esteem that they will believe any moron that steps up to the microphone. You have to make them reputationally unwelcome. You know, we used to say in radio, the only thing we have to offer you is our credibility. Those days are so over. But that's where I was raised, and that's why I have to get it right, because that was pounded into my head.
It calls into question the core ideological beliefs of some of these talk radio hosts if they are running political shows and espousing political positions while taking money and sponsorships from organizations that have a particularly narrow focus, both in terms of candidates, positions on ongoing issues, and promoting those groups and promoting those groups' candidates. It begs the question, where does the line between the core ideological beliefs of the host end, and where does the paid sponsorship start?
Here on cable, the viewer deserves to know when they're watching a paid announcement. On over-the-air radio and TV, the station is required to disclose. It's called sponsor identification. And something that is identified as a commercial is understood as such is one thing, but all of these organic references and treating the sponsor as a news source is where it becomes a very gray area, and the listener, the viewer, might not understand that free speech had a price tag.
And people are getting very rich off of playing you. You are being played by a conservative circle of scam. Sort of a circle jerk, if you will. The right is very busy fleecing each other, and everyone wins. Dick Morris wins, even though Sean Hannity wins, Glenn Beck wins. They all win. You know who the big loser is? The individual who gives their money to the Heritage Foundation. $80 million in opera, 300 employees. Assets that would blow your mind, and you're giving them $25. Everybody's got their hand in the till. The only loser is you. You're being played.